Hi, I'm Roy with Aeropro Coaching, and this is Pat Jennings, lead master coach for Aeropro Coaching, and we're here today to really introduce a series of videos that we're going to do surrounding garments, actually surrounding bike computers, which is what we consider the most effective training tool available on the market today. And we typically don't look at these as tools, but we look at these as recording devices or just some like thing to tell us where to go, directional device, whatever. Or it gives us a bunch of numbers that we don't know what we're doing with. So what we're going to do is give you some tips, some coaching tips on how to use this more effectively to make your training, your rides, and racing more efficient and more effective for you. So the first thing we're going to start off with is setting up the zones. So training zones allow us to organize the efforts that we put in, or to organize our training. So there's a lot of stuff out there on zones, and we're not going to really tackle that. But we are going to show you how to set up your zones and put them into your training computers. And every training computer is going to be a little different with that. But the key takeaway, or the thing to know, is that you need to make sure that you set your zones. So your threshold, heart rate, whether it's power or heart rate, whatever your threshold level is, you have to set that in your computer. And if you do not, then this becomes less effective for you. So there are a lot of different zones, or a lot of different ways to get your zones, or to do testing to get those zones. And so we're not really going to tackle that today. We may tackle that in other videos. So the main focus is to show you how to get those all set up. Do you have anything to add about that, Pat?
So today's video is going to be about Garmin. In subsequent videos, we will cover the Wahoo Element and the Wahoo Bolt. But for today's purposes, we're really just going to try and illustrate how to set up Garmin's and especially how to reflect the various training zones. And so today we're going to specifically set up training zone number 3, which is tempo.
So I'm going to start with, this is a 520. Again, we're not here to, there's a lot of videos out there, tutorials on telling you how to work all the ins and outs of these different computers, but our goal of this one is to show you how to set up your zone. So if you have the 520, you'll come on to the main screen here, and if you toggle down, it'll give you a list of screens that'll come up, and you'll see history, training, and then my stats is the one we're looking for. So in my stats, as we get to my stats, we want to go ahead and select that. If I select that, and it's going to pop up a bunch of different things here: VO2, FTP, personal records. We want to go to the bottom. And at the very bottom, it's going to say training zones. So the training zones are what we want to use to set the baseline of this this training tool. So without setting any zones, the tool becomes less effective. So we're going to make it more effective by setting up some zones for you.
So this next screen will enable you to set it up either by heart rate zones or by power zones. And today, for this video, we're going to do power zones. So if you click on power zones, then it'll bring you to the next screen, which will start with FTP. So you're going to enter your functional threshold power. And then the next screen is going to be based on watts. So you want to select watts. And then the third metric there is the configuration. And we've chosen the 9 Kogan eye levels. And then that will then populate all of your power zones 1 through 9. And then that will populate into your workouts. So when we go and set up the screen to specifically track zone 3 based on your specific functional threshold power, it'll reflect that range, which would be around 25 or 30 watts.
And so, what that was good, Coach Pat. And Coach Pat, where we get this threshold power, the functional threshold power at the top, it says FTP, where you enter that. That's where you've done some kind of testing, whether you've done it in a lab, out in the field, or you're just taking a wild guess of what your threshold power is, or maybe you're using Strava to figure out your whatever Strava tells you your threshold is. Whatever means that you're using out there to find your threshold. At the beginning, it's not really that important. Now, for us as coaches, it's important, and we use specific protocols that we'll talk about later on. But in this one, you can see it's functional threshold power. You can throw in a number. We're going to use 200 for this video, and then with that, we'll come down to based watts. You'll have an option of either percentages or watts. So you can do a percentage of your threshold, or you can do the basic raw number of watts. We want to use the raw number. And then configuration of zones. It doesn't matter what zones you choose to use. You can use the 7 zones. You can use Coggins zones. We use Coggins 9 when we develop our training plan, so we're going to choose that today. And then when you go down, you'll see that all of your power zones now are going to be in a raw number instead of a percentage. So you'll see 0 to 110 for zone 1, zone 2, zone 3. So like Coach Pat said, we're going to focus in on zone 3, which is tempo. And for this athlete who's 200 watts, it's 150 to 180 watts. So 150 to 180 is their tempo. And that's how we're going to use we're going to really focus on in setting up a tempo-specific training page. So kind of sets us up with the zones, and that's really the basis of using this tool a little more effectively for your training. If you don't change your zones, a lot of errors that I get with Garmin and athletes in their training is they don't set their training threshold, whether it's power or heart rate in here, and then they get some bogus numbers. So in order to get the accurate numbers or as accurate as possible, you want to be able to set either the heart rate value or the power value. Okay, and once you have that, then you'll be able to take and use this a little bit more effectively. And we're going to show you how to do that in other videos. Anything, Coach Pat, you want to add to that?
So the training zones are really a central theme in the Aeropro coaching methodology to try to help athletes become more effective and more efficient on the limited amount of time that they have on their bike to do workouts. So the zones become essential and every day that you see a workout, they will be around specific zones. And those prescriptions that are written by your coach are geared specifically to creating certain adaptations for you as the athlete.
And so I have a question on that. So with the athletes that you work with, do you see, what is an error that you see in training in zones? Like, what is something that maybe one of your athletes or somebody you work with or spoke with, what is an error that they may perform when trying to do training in zones?
I think for most athletes, the beginning is the challenge is to actually hit the time in zone. It takes practice, it takes effort to try to stay in a range. And again, what we will help you with this video and subsequent videos is about how to understand this device as a training tool to get you to be fitter and stronger on the bike. So trying to hit the zone, that 25 or 30 watt range, can be really difficult for the first couple of rides that you do, where you might be asked to do 2 20-minute intervals at tempo, and as you're tracking your time in zone on the screen, you may finish that workout and have 9 or 10 minutes actually in the zone, but you thought you were riding in the zone for 2 by 20. And so I think that that's perhaps the hardest thing for athletes to get used to, is the practice, the discipline of their pedal stroke as they're riding.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, it's good insight, because, and another thing I'll add to that is that And the reason time and zone's important in tracking metrics is that each zone requires a certain amount of stress. And if you don't provide enough stress, you won't see adaptation. So if you're only spending 10 minutes in tempo, that may not provide enough stress for you to improve. You might need 20 or 30 minutes at tempo to actually see any improvement. So when you're tracking time and zone, it really kind of, as coaches, it'll narrow our focus so we can individualize that training for you. Because if you don't spend enough time, just like in weightlifting, if you don't lift enough weight, you're not going to get, see strength gains. Same thing with endurance. If you don't spend enough time in the zone, then you're not going to see those gains. And a lot of people, they spend a lot less time in the zone than they think they are.
So let's get to setting up the screen.
So what we're going to do is, one of the ways that we are going to make this tool more effective for you is we're going to help you set up all the zone, a page for every zone. So every zone is going to have a training page. And what that's going to do for you is when you wake up that day and you're doing a tempo ride, for example, you're like Tuesday tempo, then you're going to go to your Garmin and you're going to be able to select the ride. So you go to ride and you're going to select ride, and in that selection of ride, it's going to say tempo. And you're going to be able to select tempo, and it's going to give you 7 screens, 7 specific screens that you are going to be able to use to track that ride.
To customize.
Yeah, to how effective that ride is. So we're going to show you how, these are the 7 screens that we use to make tempo riding more effective. And the way you're going to do that is, again, you're going to go into your settings. You're going to scroll until you find settings. You're going to select settings. Once you're in settings, you're going to go to activity profiles. Once you're in activity profiles, you're going to say create a new profile. And then when you create that new profile, you're going to name it. And you're going to name it tempo. So you can just type that in and you're going to name that profile tempo. Okay? If you're doing hard tempo like sweet spot, you'll name it sweet spot. If you're going to do threshold work, you'll name it threshold. But for today, we're focusing on tempo. So in here, we have our tempo screen, and then we're going to go to the data screen. So once you've named it, you're going to go down, and it's going to give you can change the color. But we're going to go into the data screens. And once we are into the data screens, we're going to select the number of screens we want to see. And we want to see 7 screens. If you want to delete one and do 6, you can, but we're going to use 7. That's the number we prescribe. So you're going to set up 7 screens, and it's going to give you 7 fields. And the fields that we're going to use for this, number 1 is going to be time. Okay? You're going to select time. Number 2 is going to be average 3-second power. Average 3-second power. Number 3 is going to be power in zone, so time in zone. And we're selecting zone 3, which is tempo. So time in zone, power, zone 3. Power last lap, so your last lap average power. Cadence, heart rate, and training stress score, or TSS. So the number, or what we've been talking about is time and zone. So let me show you how to find some of these fields. They're pretty basic, but you'll go to a field. So we went to field 3, and in field 3 we would select a field. So they give you a bunch of different categories to choose from, and we're going to go to power. So we're going to find power. We're going to select power, and we're going to scroll, and we're going to see time in zone. You'll see it. You'll see 7. You'll see 8. And now we're going to look for zone 3, time in zone 3, and we're going to select that and make that a field. We can also select in power. You're going to find training stress score. So there's training stress score in power. You're also going to find average lap. So your average last lap, power last lap, and then average 3-second power. So all of those will be found inside the power zone. So there's a time, and there's a bunch of different categories. We're not really going to go over that, but those are the 7 that we feel are important. And once you have those 7 fields selected, okay, and you have that saved, Again, when you go to your ride, you can select it, pick tempo, and now you have the 7 fields for tempo. Again, those 7 fields are duration, which is time, power, which is 3 second. And the reason we use 3 second, it smooths out the power. So your power will jump around. Instantaneous power will go up and down depending on the forces applied to you while you're riding your bike, or how smooth or unsmooth your pedal stroke is. So we use 3 second average to smooth that out. And we feel 3 second average is the best to use. Then the next zone, number 3, is time in zone. So time in zone is how much time during a training session you spend in that zone. So for us, it's zone 3, which is the 150 to 180 watts. So every pedal stroke that you're at 150 to 80 watts, or your tempo, it's going to get recorded, and it's accumulative. So it's a running time. If you ride for 2 hours, within that 2 hours, it's going to measure how many minutes, seconds that you spent in tempo. Okay, so that's going to be important. Power last lap. So in the power of the last lap, the way we use this, if we prescribe to you a workout that tells you to do two sets of 20 minutes at tempo, so 2 by 20 at tempo, when you start your set, that starts the lap. At the end of it, you'll hit the lap button. When you hit the lap button, which is on the bottom left, then that's going to segment out that interval for 20 minutes. And then you're going to see power last lap, what you just did. So if I did a 20-minute tempo effort, it's going to show me my average power for that 20 minutes. And then I'm going to know, did I go over? Was I under that? Or was I on target? So that gives you a direct feedback, real time, right after you're done with the interval. It also tells you how it felt. Then we're going to have cadence, that's revolutions per minute, how many times you're spinning the cranks. Then we have heart rate, again, that's a measure of intensity based on heart rate. And then training stress score. We use training stress score quite a bit. It's the measurement of duration and intensity. It's a very simple way to explain it, but you take the duration and intensity, and then you compare that to your baseline threshold. Again, back to threshold. And that will give you a training stress score. And you'll get that for every ride that you do, and you can compare those rides and how much stress that ride's been put upon you. So these are the 7 fields that when we prescribe workouts, we want our athletes to kind of monitor. And you can also do this without even having a coach. You don't have to be on a coaching plan. You don't have to watch power. You don't have to stare at your computer. But what you can do is take these 7 fields, just turn your computer on and go and ride. And then when you're done with your ride, you can stop it and analyze the data on these fields. And we're going to tell you a little bit about that. Coach Pat, you have some stuff to add to that?
So if you do that prescription of 2 by 20, and at the end of that ride, you see that you were able to achieve 12 or 15 minutes in zone within that 30 watt range, then what you can learn from that is your next ride on Tempo Tuesday on the following week, your goal should be to increase that. So as you're on your bike and as you're pedaling, you will find that your pedal stroke will get smoother and that you will not have the greater fluctuations. And that's really the goal, is to be able to become much smoother in your pedal stroke and keep that within a tighter range. And as you do, then your fitness will improve over time.
Yeah, I mean, Coach Pat really touched on something that's important. And we all think that when we go out there and ride or we train, that we just go out there and do it and ride. We go 2 by 20. We hit the power zones that's prescribed to us. But in reality, it takes practice, and you have to practice. Like if you play golf, you got to hit a lot of golf balls to be able to make shots. So it's the same thing with workouts. You have to practice your workouts, and it's a little different because we're trying to get some physiological effects from the workouts. But it's also important to note that you have to really practice these, and then the direct feedback of that is these 7 key fields that we have for tempo. And the time and zone, you go out there and you do 2 by 20 at tempo, you would think that that's going to equal 40 minutes. because you did 40 minutes of tempo 2x20. But a lot of times it will read 10 minutes or 15 minutes. Or if you go out to Tempo Tuesday and you say, we're going to ride tempo for an hour, and you guys ride for tempo and you think it's an hour, at the end of the ride you'll look and it's about 15 to 20 minutes. So out of 60 minutes, you were only at tempo for 15 or 20 minutes. Now that may be enough, it may not be enough. That's could be up for debate. But how you can use that effectively is if at the end of that Tempo Tuesday, you did 15 minutes of tempo, time and zone, which you'll be able to see at the end of the ride. Then the next week you want to shoot for 20 minutes, or maybe 18 minutes, or maybe 25 minutes. You want to improve that. So you want to have, hey, this is what I did, a baseline, then next week, and then the following week and the following week. And the other thing I'll challenge you with that is if you do this, if you set these 7 zones up, right, and you track it, you go out and do Tempo Tuesday, and you do 10 minutes, and then the next week you do 15 minutes, check what the TSS does. At the bottom left, that's where we have TSS. See what that does. Does it increase? Does it decrease or stay the same? And I'm going to bet it's going to go up. And when training stress score goes up, you're putting your body under more load, which is going to create adaptation, and you're going to improve as a cyclist. Anything else?
So I think in future videos, we're going to cover some of the other zones. So today we spoke about tempo zone 3, which is one of the more important ones for baseline work for all athletes. Then we're going to talk about, I think in the next one we're going to do sweet spot, and then we'll do threshold, and then probably VO2 max. But you have been given this information now. You can set up these screens yourself since you know how to do that. And then as you have your various workouts that are calling for different zones, now you can just pull it right up on your screen, and you've got those metrics already loaded, and it will help you to become a more effective rider. And that's really what each of us wants to do.
Yeah, Pat nailed it. I mean, our goal with this and with these videos is not to show you the features and benefits of a Garmin, but we want to take these training tools, whatever one they are. It doesn't matter if it's a Wahoo or a Garmin or whatever brand you use. But we want to make this to become a very powerful training tool, which it is. And I think we undervalue the power of this tool. And our goal with this, Aeropro's goal with this, is for you to be able to turn your computer on, select the type of riding you're going to do. It's going to pull up the fields that you should be able to observe or watch. And at the end of the ride, you stop it, and then you can have some numbers that you're able to track or quantify in your head. You can write it down. You don't have to go onto fancy software. You don't have to have a fancy coach. We'd like you to have one, but if you don't, it's fine. But all we want to do is to let you know that this is in itself one of the most powerful tools that we have as cyclists or endurance athletes. And so now you have 7 fields. As soon as you're done with your ride, whether it's a race, whether it's a group ride, whether it's a Gran Fondo, your Tough Guy Tuesday, your Slam Jam Thursday, whatever it is, whatever ride it is, we're gonna create fields for that. So this one we're starting with tempo. Maybe the next one we're going to do a crit field. Maybe the next one we'll do a time trial. Maybe the next one we'll do sweet spot, VO2. We're going to do a bunch of different fields. So some of these will apply to you. Triathletes, we'll do a triathlon specific one for you. What fields that are important. Maybe calories are important to you because nutrition is important and fueling. So we're going to each video is going to give you a specific field or a set of fields. So to me it's very valuable because I can go on here, I hit tempo, it gives me the 7 fields. I do my workout. When I'm done with my workout, I look at it, I can go, oh, training stress score 100. Let's see if I can do 110 next week. Or my time in zone is 60. Let's see if I can get to 70. And I don't ever have to upload it. I don't have to do anything else with it. Nothing. I can just say, okay, I'm done, and move on. It can be as simple as you want or as complex as you need it to be. And that's kind of where we're going with this. So we appreciate your time. And
so the important takeaway from this is to look at your trip computer not just as a recording device, not something to simply tell you how fast you're going, but as a training tool to help you to track and quantify the specific effort that you're putting out so that you can see and measure your own progress. And I think that if we can impart any message to you, that's really what we want to help you to understand. Thanks for watching.